Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the High School Golf Podcast. I'm Crystal Morse along with Ted Bishop, and today we are going to focus on developing players from different skill levels and give you specific practice plans and resources that you can use as a high school golf coach to help your players through the season. So Ted, here in Indiana, we're just starting out our high school boys season. And I want to start out this podcast by talking about how important having the right clubs in their bag is for them and what we can do as coaches at the beginning of the season to help our players evaluate their equipment and a few things we can look for there.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, Crystal. And I would say this, particularly with the lesser skilled or more inexperienced players that we all have on our teams. Let's face it, they probably don't have 14 clubs in their bag. There's probably not 14 clubs that they can actually hit. So as they get better, there's certainly a great opportunity to expand the clubs that would go in their bag. And I think that what I see with both our boys and girls who are what I would call pretty decent players, most of them have multiple wedges in their bag. And obviously they get to a point where they can control the distance with all those different lofts of wedges. I think one of the things we look for as coaches is we try to eliminate these gaping gaps that might exist between particular clubs.
Let's talk about the freshmen that you may have, freshmen and sophomores, those kids that are still growing, that are just maybe come out of middle school, and they're still probably going to experience some growth spurts at that freshman and sophomore level. Some that you may have coming in as a freshman could still be playing with junior clubs. That's something you need to look at. One of the resources that we use a lot is a website. We're obviously big with Callaway here at the Legends, and we use a website called CallawayPreowned.com. And if you just hop on that website, you're going to be able to see a variety of, we're talking wedges, putters, full sets, drivers, Callaway equipment that is maybe last year's model or, all the way to, probably within the last 5 years that you're going to be able to have your kids purchase. Obviously, with a variety of shafts, you got to make sure you have the right shaft in the club. But the cost of the club is going to be significantly less than what it would be right off the shelves. That is a huge resource that we use. Now, if you have a kid that needs some new clubs or needs to upgrade, the biggest key that I can give you is find out their swing speed with their 7-iron and with their driver. That swing speed is going to be a general rule of thumb of what kind of shaft that they need to be in. Do they need to be in a graphite flex, steel flex, regular, stiff, whatever it may be? But you have to get an idea of their club head speed to be able to make that recommendation.
Yeah, and I want to get back to the wedges for just a second because I'm sure if I'm a coach out there listening and maybe you're an inexperienced coach and you've got a lot of these new to the game players on your team, a logical question would be, well, what wedges should I make sure that my players do have? And I would say every player that's on your team, no matter the skill level, should have a 56-degree wedge in their bag. That would be the traditional sand wedge that was in play for many, many decades prior to these higher lofted wedges that have come into existence the last 15 or 20 years. And that 56-degree wedge is going to have a configuration on the sole called bounce that's going to allow a player to actually get the ball out of the bunker better, where most other wedges are not set up with that kind of a sole, and they're going to dig into the sand, and it's going to make it harder for them to get the ball out of the sand. So we're all probably going to be playing out of some bunkers from time to time, so I think everyone needs to have a 56-degree wedge. Then obviously, people are going to have a pitching wedge in their bag. And again, depending upon the skill level and the club count that's in there probably needs to be, at least for beginning inexperienced players, what I would call a gap wedge, which would be somewhere between 56 degrees and probably these pitching wedges all vary in their lofts today based on the manufacturer and the model, but somewhere around maybe 50 degrees, an A wedge, a gap wedge, a club that'll fill in between the pitching wedge and the sand wedge. Those are three pieces of equipment that are really critical for every player, no matter the skill level, would be to make sure you've got at least those three wedges in your bag.
You want to look at about a 4-degree gap between
Y
your wedges.
In a perfect world, I think with more
Well,
skilled players.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. And so, but even if you have a player who's trying to break 50, the more that you can have them focus on those wedges gives them a little bit more creativity around the greens. I like to look at the fact that, okay, you may be inexperienced now, but let's look a little bit further down the road. You may need this wedge in your bag. So the 56 in the 52 degree or the 50 degree are going to be just really important clubs to have around the green. Again, Callaway Pre-Owned's a great one, and I suggest you ask your local pro. They may have a lot of good resources as well.
Yeah, and I think and you alluded to this early on when we started talking about really making an evaluation of the clubs that are in a player's bag, and I think that thing that you should always look at doing if you have, players on your team and the season's over with, then I think that's where you need to kinda step in, interact with the parents, and you've now had a chance to evaluate those players going through an entire season, and you can really give the player and the parents some solid feedback on, "Here's some critical areas that you really need to upgrade if you want to try to reach the next skill level."
Right. In the next area, so you have your wedges that generally you're going to see a big gap between, and then you're going to have your long clubs that's generally the next gap you're going to see that usually you're going to need to fill in. If a player goes from driver to 4-iron, there's going to be a gap there that you're going to probably want to fill with a hybrid or a fairway wood, depending on your player. So those are kind of the two areas of their bag that we see kind of have the biggest gapping and could require the most attention.
One last thing, I remember when I taught a lot of beginning women at one point in my career, and I would always say to them, Here's what you need to do. Identify the one or two really favorite clubs in your bag." And again, getting back to these inexperienced players that are coming onto your team, they can't hit all 14, all 10 clubs that they may have in their bag. So, have them determine what one or two clubs they really feel comfortable with, and they need to hit those things as many times as they can when they're out there trying to play, just to be able to advance the ball forward and make the game fun. And then as they hopefully get better, obviously they're going to be more diversified in what their club selection might be with what they've got in their bag.
We're going to get into that a little bit later when we talk about on course improvement and maybe club selection, keeping the ball in play. There is one other kind of resource and note that I want coaches to take advantage of. And again, this is a Monday. We're going into the week, really our first full practice week that we've had, where we have 5 days of practice before a tournament coming up on Saturday. And so, really important to get it started off with a good, solid practice plan for the week. We've shared resources in the past with the NFHS coaching certification, the ADM, the American Development Model resources that the PGA has to offer. But there honestly is, I'm not sure there's anything better now than AI as far as helping you organize a game plan or a practice plan. And I'll tell you exactly what I did yesterday. I went to askgpt.com. So chat GPT, everybody's heard of it. Basically, you can type in, I'm a high school coach of Franklin Community Boys team. I have 14 guys on my team. Can you create a 2-hour practice plan using ADM activity plans? And I'll tell you, I had this conversation with ChatGPT and it was incredible. It saves you so much time. It just put together this practice plan and it even said, hey, if you have JV players, I can create another practice plan for JV players. And so don't miss out on this opportunity. It saves yourself a lot of time and it's super, super effective. And obviously, we look through it. I don't use all the activities or I modify it as well. But basically, you can have a conversation with, the smartest person right there on your computer and have it create a lot of info for you. So coaches uh, don't miss out on that opportunity to use AI. Now, Ted, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk specifically about developing players of different skill levels on your team and things that we can do specifically to develop those players during practice. Why don't you get us started there?
Well, I think the interesting thing to do is you try to break your players into different categories. We've got this group of players that we probably are trying to get to break 50. I mean, in the case of some freshmen. It could even be we're trying to get them to break 60 to begin with, but breaking 50 would be one plateau. Then I think once you get past that, then trying to break 45 is obviously the next area, and then ultimately trying to get them to break 40 and possibly shoot par or less. I think that one of the keys in getting players to play as well as they can, no matter what skill level they might be, is to try to get them to control their aggressive play and eliminate big holes. You take risk away to avoid blow up holes. And particularly with our more skilled players, we've talked about this numerous times where we use the Mike Fleck, men's golf coach at Ball State University's 80% rule, where unless you feel confident you can hit that shot, execute it 80% of the time, then you don't try it. You hit something else. And I think, particularly with these lesser skilled players, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them inside 100 yards, what I would call the scoring zone, as quickly as we possibly can. And then hopefully some wedge play and some short game fundamentals take over, and that's going to allow them to make bogeys, even double bogeys in some cases are going to be certainly better than triples or max double pars. But it's really identifying, I think, how you communicate with these different skill levels of players. And as a coach, you probably have to coach a little bit harder because you're not going to be able to coach all the players on your team the same way. But I think if you're going to be as effective as you can and your players are going to improve as best they can, then you need to really have a game plan for each particular skill level that you have.
It definitely can be a challenge and, kind of force you to put a little bit more thought into it, but even if you can, break your players up into kinda 2 different groups and have each of those groups working on different things, and I will say, when we're talking about the players that you are trying to break 50 and even break 45, those bogey golfers, one thing that can be huge in getting them to understand is one, just general club face control. What is an open club face? What is a closed club face? What is a square club face? Very basic, fundamental understanding. And then you as a coach doing a little research on just general ball flight laws. And this is maybe a little technical in the what we learn as PGA professionals, but again, if you can understand what makes the ball start straight and then curve to the left. Or maybe it starts left and curves to the right. If you can understand those general ball flight laws, that is drastically going to help you as a coach be able to pinpoint where that player needs to work on. Is it your aim? Is it your club face? And I'll say most of the time, when we're looking at players, if you can pay close attention to their setup, say, okay, where are your feet aimed? Where are your shoulders aimed? And if you're aimed correctly and the ball is still curving one way or the other, then it's a club face issue. And then that allows you to really dig into, okay, what is it that's controlling the club face? And that's generally your grip, the player's grip that is going to control the club face. It can be very simple, but getting your players to understand that their grip is what controls their club face, and their club face is what controls the golf ball. Don't underestimate, there's a lot of kids that don't know that information.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the two keys to scoring are pretty simple: keeping the ball in play and being a really great lag putter. And I think that's true for all different skill levels, and that kind of leads us right into the putting part of it and getting back to what you're saying about face control with the putter. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of exercises that you can do. For example, a ruler, if you just have a yardstick, that is actually a really effective tool. Start with like a short putt within 6 feet. Start with a really flat lie, set the ball on the yardstick, and have the player putt and keep the ball on the yardstick the entire time. And what you're going to find is that the ball generally is going to fall off either to the right or to the left, and that helps them understand their club face.
Yeah, the really important thing here too is to get the right yardstick. And what you're looking for is a thin yardstick, and you're looking for a yardstick that's got a hole on one end of the yardstick. We've all seen these where somebody will hang them on a pegboard or something, but the hole is where you want to place your ball on that end of the yardstick. But the thinner the yardstick, the better. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. And so what that helps a player do is just notice if the ball is rolling out to the right, obviously club face is open at impact. If the ball is rolling off the yardstick to the left, then club face is closed. And so what it does, it just helps them get a real good feel of just keeping that putter square and kind of what they're doing. So the yardstick's a good one. We do have a tool from Eyeline Golf. Eyeline has a lot of great teaching aids. This one is a colored putting stick. Basically, take practice swings and gets them to equal out their stroke. So if they're taking it 3 inches back, they want to take it 3 inches through, and really helps develop that feel of, do I have an equal putting stroke, or am I decelling through the shot, or whatever it may be.
talk about the gate drill. You use that drill a lot.
I like the gate drill. So what you're going to want to do is, again, find a flat putt, set the putter face down, just have the player set up to the golf ball, and put a tee on the toe of the putter and the heel of the putter, so that it basically forms a gate that is just wide enough for the putter to go through. And then the player is going to practice putting through that gate and making sure that their putter does not hit the tees. And it's a really challenging exercise, but it's super effective. And again, making sure that the putter face is staying square through impact. Pretty popular putting drill.
Yeah, and I think again, if you get back to these varying skill levels, so with those players that are really struggling to break 50. I mean, I think you start out and you put them 3 feet from the hole, flat putts, and you really work on this face angle. And they'll understand immediately what you're talking about if their ball's going right or left, and that'll help them get an idea of what they need to do to square the face up, probably use their shoulders more than their hands. And then, the people are in that next group of players, you can go with slider or more slope putts, 4 to 10 footers. And as you find out, obviously, this is a pretty basic statement, but the players that are breaking 80, uh, shooting par, they're probably doing a pretty good job of controlling their face angle in their stroke. And then with those players, a lot of times it comes alignment, it winds up being an absolutely huge issue with why they might be missing some putts. But, there's some drills that I like also on the putting green. I feel like you have to have great feel to be able to have good speed control, and they go hand in hand. So we spend a lot of time having our players putt to the collar from 20, 40, 60 feet. The idea is to have the ball just roll to the collar. There's and you use this, yeah, I know you use this drill where you actually don't look at the ball when you putt. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I like this for only the long putts. I don't use it for short putts. But if you are practicing these long putts, have the player just look at the hole or the collar. So take a couple practice swings while they're only looking at the hole, not the ball, and then have them address the ball, make sure they're set up properly, and then just look at the hole as they putt. What it does, it just really helps with that speed control, helps your brain lock into what a 30-foot putt may feel like, 20-foot putt, 40-foot putts. It's really programming your brain for those specific kind of putts, those lag putts that we're looking at.
Well, Jordan Spieth won the US Open one year doing that same thing throughout the tournament. But, then another last good drill that we like to have our players do is set tees down at 15, 30, and 45 feet, putt, from both directions. And this is the only time that I'll tell the player, watch the putter go back with your eyes so that you can kind of quantify the length of the backstroke for each distance of putt. This sounds pretty simple. You would think that in order to hit a longer putt, you would have to take the putter further back, but it's amazing how many players we see take the putter back the same distance, whether they're hitting it 60 feet or 10 feet, and then they try to manipulate it with with the forward stroke. And we like to see the stroke being what I would call equal, almost the same amount of backstroke as you have forward stroke. And another thing that I feel like is a key component that all coaches can look for in players, you need to make sure your putters are key or your players are taking the putter back low. Keep it as low to the ground going back as you can. And as those putting strokes lengthen out, Crystal, a lot of times that's when you see players pick the putter up. And then when they come into the ball, they actually hit down on it, causes the ball to hop and not really roll out. So by keeping the putter low throughout the backstroke and the forward stroke, then the ball will come off the putter face with overspin on it and it will roll out a lot better to the hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to some chipping techniques, and then we'll talk about on course practices that we can do to help our players improve. So, with those that are trying to break 50, one thing you want to do is just find that club in their bag, likely not their most lofted club. We even have a hybrid here. That you could that you could chip with off the fringe, but try their A wedge, their gap wedge, even their pitching wedge to get them using a little more bump and run style. Get the ball on the ground as soon as you can and get it rolling to the hole and not add a lot of loft to it. I would use that same technique with those that are those bogey golfers, even that are trying to break 45. And then as you get into your better player, still try to get that 60-degree out of their hands and just getting them to adjust the face angle of that 56 or 58-degree.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you were going to toss a ball to the hole and you'd ask yourself, am I going to get the ball closer to the hole, tossing the ball up in the air or rolling it along the ground? You're going to get it closer to the hole every time by rolling it low to the ground. I've taken some of our better players out on our boys team and put them 25, 30 yards from the hole and had them start out pitching with their 60-degree wedge. And, it's they're having a hard time getting the ball close to the hole. I'm talking 8 feet from the hole when they do this. And then you put an A wedge in their hands and you start having them hit these little pitch and run shots. And it's just amazing how much better their worst chip is with that A wedge than their best chip is with that 60-degree wedge.
Right. The problem there with is getting the buy-in because they watch these YouTube videos and they watch the pros hitting these big flop shots. And obviously it's just more fun to hit a flop shot, you know, get the ball, see the ball go high. So you got to get a little buy-in from them, kind of let them realize that it's not the most efficient club for them.
You're really good about using cones when you do a lot of your junior work over on the chipping green. And when you're working on chipping and pitching with your players, I would really suggest that you set up a couple of different cones where the landing area needs to be for some of these basic pitch shots and really get your players well tuned in to picking out a point on the green where they're trying to land the ball to. But I love setting these cones up, where you're creating this landing zone, which is just it's a very definable visual thing that you can do that I think really help people chip better.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting them to pay attention to where the ball lands, not just where the ball, like, and in relation to where the ball ends up, is a really effective way to get them to learn that relationship. So let's jump into some on course games and strategies that we can use during practice to help our players, Ted.
The first one we'll talk about is the perfect drive drill. And everybody's going to hit a tee shot, and then no matter where their tee shot goes, they're going to pick their ball up and they're going to go to the middle of the fairway, 100 yards out from the green, and they're going to play the hole out from that point. And I think that's going to tell you and your players a lot. First of all, it's going to probably surprise them that they're not going to score as well as they think they might if they're in a perfect position on every hole because they need to work on wedge play.
Yes, absolutely. Anything that you can do to help them realize that they are going to hit more shots in a round of golf with their wedges than they are with their driver, really. And that's going to be, key for them to understanding how important that is.
So what you have to be able to do here is to quantify this game. And what I would do is what your players' average scores are through qualifying or competition or whatever, wherever you're at, even at this part of the season, and have them go play 9 holes where on the driving holes, they're putting the ball in this position and see how their score compares when they hit the perfect drive compared to what it does when they're actually out there playing.
One of the other really fun games you can do is have all your players play the forward tees. And again, what this does, it forces them to work on their wedges. And Ted, I know that you like to even have the players predict their scores from those forward tees because oftentimes they think that they're just going to go low, right? They think this is going to be easy and I'm going to go low from the forward tees. And then what they find is they may not go as low as they think they're going to.
No, they don't because they're gonna bring more trouble into play, particularly off the tee, and it's gonna change the way the golf course looks, compared to what they're typically gonna see, and I always find this interesting, particularly in girls golf, where maybe some of our best players will talk about high school golf and how short some of the courses are and how, well, it's not a great test, this and that. Well, let me tell you what it is. It's a way for you to really, again, develop your short game. And what it will do is it will expose your short game one way or the other. And on the flip side of that, I've heard somebody like Bryson DeChambeau talk about how important he thinks it is for players to go out and play the short tees, put themselves in a position where they can take it under par, particularly your good players, and really get comfortable with having that score being under par and continuing to go deep and deep and deep. And so there's a lot of things you can do with this forward tees game.
If you have some players that just aren't really ready for competition, here's what I would recommend you do with them. Start them from, don't even have them hit their tee shot, just start them from 100 yards and in. These are the players that may not be able to break 60 or that you just don't feel like are ready for competition, that are just coming out for the game. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with them? How am I supposed to make them better? Well, set a cone out at 100 yards or just have them find that 100-yard marker and have them play from 100 yards. One, it's going to make them play quicker. So you're not going to have to worry about pace of play when you go out there. And it's just going to force them to work on those shorter clubs in that scoring zone. Ideally, you want them to be able to break 40 from 100 yards and in. Ideally 36 you want them to shoot, but put a number on it. Say, hey, when you can shoot 40 or better or 36 or better from 100 yards and in, then we're going to move you back. And then you can move them back to 200 yards, put on that same scoring expectation. And it's really going to help those players develop without the slow pace of play or losing a lot of golf balls.
Yeah, I think another one would be the 5 club or the 3 club challenge, and that would be where you pick 5 clubs or 3 clubs in your bag and you go play. And it'll be amazing at how good the scores are when people are obviously picking a putter and some kind of a preferred wedge, and then it'll be interesting to see what the other club or 3 clubs are, depending on the format that they play. I've seen is that players shoot remarkably better than what they think they would when they're actually hitting the favorite clubs in their bag.
Another good exercise is taking the flag sticks out when your players play. Get out ahead of them, take the flag stick out. It really makes the target a lot bigger, forces them to aim more at the middle of the green to eliminate maybe short sighting themselves and getting too aggressive there.
Yeah, and speaking of short side, there's a great scoring game that you can do too around the green. It's called short side, long side. And this would be where you would chip 9 balls from different spots, short sided from, where the pin is, and then 9 balls, what I call long sided, furthest away from the pin on the other side of the green, and have the players keep track of their score and see if they score better short sided or long sided. Guarantee you they're going to score better long sided, which will help you as a coach emphasize to them again when that pin is tucked right or left. Don't play at the pin, play to the center of the green.
Right. And obviously, those players that are shooting 50, or more, they have a harder time with club face control and just they may not even understand the concept of being short sighted, the concept of not going for the pin. So that's a whole nother discussion to have with them. Picking that favorite club in the bag, putting yourself in a better position. Last, one of the things we can do, and I think we're going to probably do that this week, is play the worst ball scramble and basically pair the players up into two-person teams, and they're going to play off of the worst drive. And then a couple variations. I think we're actually going to have them play their own ball in off of the worst drive, but you can have them continue to play off of the worst golf ball as they go in.
Yeah, and I think the whole concept here as we wrap this thing up is to get people and coaches to understand how important it is to quantify how you practice. And again, I'm going to get back to the putting green, okay? And here's just a few easy games that you can play on the putting green as well. Have your players make 50 or 100 in a row from 3 feet around the hole in the direction of a clock. When you do that, anytime you putt close to the hole on a repetitive basis, make sure you have your players put a towel under their feet because they will actually burn footprints into the green if they don't. You can putt 18 different length putts, short, medium, long putts, 6, 6, and 6. Equate it to what you might see in a round of golf. Keep track of your putts. That'll give you an idea what you might have had from a scoring standpoint. I think that, one of the favorite games from all of our teams is game of 21. It's a putting game where you're putting against someone and you get a point for the closest lag putt. You get another point if you happen to have less putts on the hole. It's like you 2 putt and I 3 putt. You get 5 points if you actually hold that first putt, and the first player to 21 is who wins. And then lastly, just spending a lot of time hitting long lag putts into a 3-foot circle. Cannot emphasize enough. I mean, if you can get your players to be better lag putters, you're going to eliminate 3 putts, and that's going to certainly help their scoring out.
Absolutely. So, coaches, we hope you got some good information from this podcast. My email is crystal@thelegendsgolfclub.com.
Mine is Ted Bishop, 38, PGA at AOL.com.
And feel free to send us your feedback, send us your questions, or maybe topics that you want us to cover in the future. And this was episode 17 of the High School Golf Podcast. Have a great day.